Guys, welcome back to the channel. Today what we're going to discuss is how to stop flipping the golf club. So this is an overview from an online lesson I had earlier this week, and this golfer took the club back, and the tendency was this right shoulder, I was to put the club against my shoulders, this right shoulder started to work out towards the golf ball too early, and the tendency is this golfer kind of hang back on the right side, and the only way the club head got to the golf ball was they actually flipped the club through impact to close the face through impact. There's a couple of things that can cause a flip. The club face is a little bit too much on an open position on the way back and on the way down. That flip release is actually an attempt to actually close the club face. And also, because this right shoulder was out of position, our body weight's hanged back on the way down, and the tendency is we have to flip the golf club to get the club to the golf ball. So what we worked on with this golfer is, when we release the golf club, let's say we early release the golf club, we over release to have too much forearm rotation, the club got to the top of the backswing, this golfer's right shoulder worked out too much towards the golf ball too early, and the tendency from there is they hang back, they release the club. What happens from there is, if I was to kind of do this down the line, if I over release the club, the tendency is the club head is actually out of position, it's almost stuck behind my body, my hands falling inside, the top end of the club wants to work out towards the golf ball. So what we worked on from that position, if I release the club really early, the palm of my hands actually point too much down towards the ground, almost in this action. So my hands pointing down towards the ground too much because we're trying to close the club face. So what we said to this golfer is, I want you to feel like as we take the club on the way through, I want you to just feel like you're holding the release. It's almost like Tommy Fleetwood, where your right palm is actually pointing towards the target. That's just a feeling to stabilise the club face. It's also an analogy that you're high-fiving the target. So you're high-fiving the target, that's an attempt to actually square the club face. And what we talked about is, when we get the club through impact, we just want to feel like the top end of this club kind of wants to point back towards our left pocket. That's a simple feeling you can stick to if you're struggling with an over release of your forearms on the way through. So if I release the club too early, the butt end of the club's going to point towards the golf ball. The idea is I'm trying to stabilise the club face by stopping having too much wrist action through impact. So what we've trained in the past with this golfer is we've controlled the right shoulder first. The right shoulder is going to work a little bit more down as opposed to working out too early. So what we talked about, we stabilise that first, then we stabilise the release. So the top end of the club is kind of working in a better relationship with my body, as opposed to releasing it too much. Butt end of the club wants to point back towards golf. So simple feeling, take the club, working on this right shoulder, working a little bit more down, that's what we've worked on. Remember, this is player specific to what we worked on with this player who's kind of struggling a little bit with her right shoulder on the downswing. The tendency was to release the club too early, big gap between top end of the club and body. So we talked about take the club through, butt end of the club has to point back at your left hip, and we'll almost feel like we're high-fiving the target. That's just an attempt to stabilise the club face, that's an attempt to how to release the club face properly. And one other feeling we worked on, knuckles a little bit more down towards the ground. That's going to allow the face to just stabilise a little bit more through impact, as opposed to getting the knuckles pointing too much towards the golf ball and getting this lead wrist too much in extension. So take the club back, knuckles to the ground, high-five the target, butt end of the club pointing back at your body. That is a couple of simple drills that you can work on if you're struggling with flip the release through impact, struggling to stabilise the club face. Use that drill. Let me know your thoughts on that video, and we'll see you soon.